Welcome to the Sounds of Encouragement, the place for musicians and music teachers to find support and encouragement to help you stay motivated, creative, and moving forward in what you do best. I'm Melissa Slocum, your host and number one encourager. I currently live in the Atlanta, Georgia area and have my own thriving studio teaching piano to all ages in person and online. I also help other teachers use student goal-based learning and differentiated instruction to increase motivation in their students and increase retention rates in their studios. You can learn more at www.musiclessonpathways.com. Thank you for tuning in to Sounds of Encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified of future episodes. Enjoy the following episode. Don't forget to keep listening at the end, and be sure to check out all the links in the comments or show notes. As always, I'm here for you, so you can be there for those who need you the most. Reach out to me at soundoфencouragement@gmail.com and let me know how I can better support and encourage you. Christina Lopriore studied music composition at Chapman University and graduated cum laude with a Gray Key Award in 2005 with a BA in music. She studied piano and composition under the late Dr. Michael Martin and viola under the highly respected Julliard Graduate, Mr. Robert Becker. She added cello, voice, and classical guitar to her list of instruments. She writes, "From the moment I taught my first lesson in 2003 at Olympia Russian Conservatory in Fountain Valley, I realized I had found my true calling. I was appointed as piano, music theory, and strings teacher at the small Orange County music studio, and my roster of students grew exponentially. Not much later, I realized I could run the show myself, so I moved on to start Irvine Music Lessons." She opened her multi-teacher studio with 150 students in Irvine, California, until she relocated to Long Beach in 2010. But that's not all. Along the way, she had also developed her IT skills, and she has 20 plus years of experience as a website developer and designer, specializing in creating websites for music teachers. Aside from her two careers, she volunteers at her local children's hospital alongside the music therapist. To learn more about Christina's piano studio, stop by www.christinapiano.com. Or for information about her web services, go to www.webmaestra.com. That's webmaestra.com. Well, Christina, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, Sounds of Encouragement. You heard the introduction in the bio, or in that little introduction, you heard a little bit about Christina. I met Christina basically when lockdown started in 2020, and we were part of a lot of the same Facebook groups. And you're still in the LA area, correct?
Yes, I'm in Long Beach, so a little bit south of LA.
Yeah. So, and you recently moved, I know, right?
I did. I moved in June. I've lived in Long Beach for 10 years. It's my 10-year anniversary last month. But I moved during the crazy protests that were happening in June. So now I live more in the downtown area versus closer to the beach where I was before.
Yeah. So, how was that actually? Your studio, your students are all online, correct?
Yes, we've been 100% online since basically when they announced the schools were closing in March. I think it was like St. Patrick's Day weekend for us here.
Yeah.
So I've been teaching full-time online since then.
Yeah. So the move didn't really affect your studio.
No, a lot of my students didn't even realize that I moved until I changed my camera view and they saw out my window.
That's awesome.
So I tried to keep it a secret so it didn't disrupt things.
Yeah. Well, in an online world, actually, that was one thing that maybe made things a little easier for your studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already pretty, I guess, private. My private life, it's been weird to have the camera in my house.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting getting to my students to see a little bit more of me, I guess.
Sure.
During this time.
That's also maybe kind of good.
Yeah, it's different.
So I wanted to ask you, you not only are a pianist, wonderful piano player, wonderful piano teacher, and you have multiple instruments that you can play. which I'm a little jealous of the fact that you can play cello because that's next on my list. But you have such a good, diverse skill set, and you're also a web developer, and you have IT background as well as the piano. And I'm wondering, how has that diversity of skills and having those two businesses kind of running simultaneously for you, how has that impacted, or how has 2020 impacted that for you?
It's been something that's helped keep me afloat, which has actually always been why I've had two careers, essentially. I mean, living in California is super expensive and it just keeps getting more expensive by the year. So when I was younger, when I was first starting out teaching, I didn't actually have enough students to pay my bills. So I kind of I already knew how to do web development since I was like a teenager. So I kind of fell into like taking odd web jobs and, just different jobs. And this year, I had already kind of established myself in terms of, I have a lot of really long-term clients now. So it's been a blessing, and allowed me to kind of stay relatively even during this time rather than, not being able to survive, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for other entrepreneurs and teachers to hear and musicians to hear because it's not a bad thing to have that diverse skill set.
No, I think that if you have something that you're good at, you should, use it if you enjoy doing that. I think early on in my web stuff, I didn't like it because I was working with corporations and stuff, and that's not enjoyable to me. But now that I found like my niche with music teachers and people that I connect with, I'm enjoying that a lot more. So it's become, something that is encouraging actually in a way because I'm getting to bounce ideas off of people that are in the same boat as me, but also again like feeling comfortable. So I don't think that you should ever be ashamed of having two careers or having to dip into a different skill set occasionally, to
Well, and I
keep
think because
afloat.
you're doing, web development for music teachers, it's maybe more fulfilling. Like you said,
It's
it
very,
wasn't,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I do a lot of almost, I won't say like a little bit of coaching along with it. I don't
right.
have any aspirations of doing life coaching at all, but there's a little bit of business advice that happens and we bounce ideas back and forth. And I do enjoy that more because it's exciting to see someone succeed for me.
Yeah.
It's just the same as teaching piano lessons pretty much, because when you see your student like get something and that like light comes on their face, it's the same for my web clients when they, something's easier in their life because of me. And I like that.
Yeah. And I think that's true for anyone who's in a service industry. We're about relationships. And those relationships, when you're invested, you have the opportunity to touch people's lives and to do something wonderful, and encourage them. And I agree, when you see someone succeed, it's really a good feeling because you were a part of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important, I think. And, fortunate to have two jobs where that is the case.
Yeah, yeah. So let me go through a few of the encouragement types of questions. And, you had shared some of these stories with me ahead of time, and I just love most everything that you shared. So we're going to dive into some of these. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, kind of thinking back on past encouragements you've had and people in your life in the past who've encouraged you. And my question is, was there a moment or a person in your life that encouraged you in a way that became a pivot point? And one of this, you mentioned your grandmother, which I think is awesome, but then you also talked about when you were first starting out in your teaching career, there was a gentleman who basically told you you were undervalued. Can you share that story?
Yeah. Early on in my teaching career, I was working for a music school that was run by people who weren't musicians. And I guess I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I was like the popular teacher there because I was still really young. I was only 20.
Yeah.
I might have been 19 even, actually, I don't know. But yeah, so basically I had a full roster of students. I was going to a full semester of college with 21 units. I had my IT job at my college. So that was like very few hours.
Wow.
So I started teaching music just because my IT job gave me less hours, and that's how ended up teaching, which is kind of crazy.
Okay.
So my bosses liked to parade me around to different people. I don't really understand why, but I guess because I was the young one at the school, they would take me along on like business meeting type things. And they took me on a trip up to Los Angeles right after Disney Hall had been built. So if you've never been to LA, Disney Hall is like a really cool building. It's got like these like sharp angles and stuff. So the architecture is really cool. So we went there and we had went out to dinner with this other piano teacher who was from Beverly Hills. And I'm not from California, so I also was very new to everything here, and it's just very different from where I grew up in a small town. So this is the first like adult person that I had met that was outside of my circle in my university, basically.
Sure.
That wasn't my boss.
Sure.
So he kind of walked ahead with me while my bosses kind of like trailed behind and was just chatting with me about just questions that I had about teaching, and he kind of kept interjecting into the conversation like how much money the teachers in Beverly Hills area were making, and how it sparked the realization in me that there was a potential to make this a full-time career, and actually be able to afford to pay my bills, because at the time I was making a lot of really ridiculous decisions financially. So it kind of just like put that seed in my brain, like, oh, I'm not being appreciated. And then when I graduated, I asked for a raise and they told me no. So I was like, oh, okay, it's time for me to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, I was really being underpaid, like badly, and then being overworked, also having to do their office work and all that kind of stuff. So I think that little seed is what started the thought process over the next few months of, oh, I got to figure something else out here.
Yeah, and I'm just imagining that conversation for you and, what that might have looked like and felt like in that moment. And, here's someone who, even though you've just met, clearly is a mentor type figure, has, been doing, what you're doing for a lot longer, obviously successful, and tells you you're underpaid and undervalued. And, did you know at that moment, like, oh yeah, he's right? Or did it take a while to kind of let that sink in?
Well, he didn't directly say it, so I don't even know if he realized that he was telling me that, so I think he was just trying to have like a kind of connect with me, I think, about teaching in general. Because, as you know, like back in the early 2000s, like we didn't have Facebook groups to talk to other piano teachers. So at the beginning of my career was very lonely. I think, I was in a state by myself. And I didn't have anyone else to talk to. So he's really the first piano teacher I ever met.
Wow.
So I think he may have been also trying to make that connection with another teacher that we all crave so much.
Sure.
But yeah, I think for me, it wasn't a pivot point necessarily. I think it was something, again, like it developed over time.
Yeah. And I think that's, so I reflected a little bit on that too, about how I think I've had moments in my life where I've done that for other people, where I've said, hey, you could be doing this, or you could be doing, you could make more money, or you deserve better, or you deserve more. Mm-hmm. And the more I thought about it, to me, and I've had people say that to me too, that's right up there with words like, I love you, or like that.
Yeah, well, because I think realizing your worth is so important, especially when I was younger. I did not have a lot of self-confidence. I was very shy. I had anxiety, and it was really bad. It's better now, but when I was younger, it was very bad. And I had never really had anyone, I think, I've had people be encouraging up to that point, but in a different way. Yeah. But just hearing that from someone that doesn't know me, that just met me that day, was really meaningful. So I think, this is how I always try to operate when I'm talking to strangers. And in the city that I live in, everyone's like really friendly, and like it's so different than anywhere else I've ever lived. Like everyone just says hi and how you're doing, and if they see someone struggling, they help them. Yeah. For the most part. So I think that's how I've always, ever since that, kind of always try to look and be like, you can do it to someone, even if you don't know them, because that little thing that you say could mean something to that person for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, boy, if you don't know that and if you don't feel that, that's huge. I guess I operate much the same way. I'm very careful about my words with other people, or I try to be. I mean, I certainly make mistakes and put my foot in my mouth every day, but I try to be positive and encouraging and supportive whenever I can.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we get encouragement to do things but there's a difference, I think, between expectation and encouragement. And I think, especially when we're young, we don't really know the difference. How have you gone about discerning what is encouragement and what's actually expectation for you? And you actually, at some point, I want you to share that story about your piano teacher growing up, because that's a great story. I think that a lot of people will relate to.
It's really relevant right now also for me. um, but yeah, well, when I was younger, I definitely could not discern the difference. Obviously, like you mature and you figure out how people interact with each other and how you interact, with what they say to you. I think at this point in my life, the difference between expectation and encouragement is that expectation kind of feels like a shadow over you sometimes. If it doesn't come along with some encouragement,
Sure.
it feels heavy, like you're carrying a weight. And maybe, it's what someone else wants to do for you, or perhaps it's what you want to do for yourself and you're not, pushing yourself along in a positive way.
Mm.
And encouragement feels like a warm blanket, I think, and they can be combined, and that's fantastic when that
Sure.
happens. That's what my grandmother did for me. She did both of those things, and that's why I brought her up as a person that was important, because she set that at a young age, because I spent a lot of my early childhood at my grandmother's house. There was always this expectation to do what you're supposed to do, but this also gentle encouragement that you're able to do it, and you can.
Yes, yes. And I think this is so cool because, this is kind of what we've always done with groups that we've worked with. Like my husband and I volunteer for, over the years, a lot of different organizations that our kids are in, and if you're a leader of something and you're working with, a group of kids, or even in my piano studio, I set the expectations actually fairly high. But then I'm always making sure that I'm giving them the tools to get there and giving the encouragement to get there. And I think that's so important, is that we're not just hearing things that are expectation, but we're also hearing, I'm going to set this expectation, but I'm going to help you along the way, or give you the tools along the way and encourage you to get there. And then we have to be able to turn around and do that for other people. It's not just, oh, here, you need to meet this goal. It's, well, this is a goal, that would be great to work for, but here are the tools to get there, and here's the encouragement, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can't just expect someone to do something without having those tools. I say that in my studio also, I'm giving you a toolbox, use your skills that I'm giving you. And whenever there's a student, like let's say they're like, I don't know where middle C is. I'm like, well, what, it's the first note you learned,
Yeah.
I give them a little push. I don't tell them the answer usually, you
Right.
know.
Right.
I think I've seen that also, like, um, sometimes there's parents that just like yell at a student, like if they don't get something right away. Now that
Right.
I'm seeing that more when I'm online because I can hear what's going on in their homes.
Yeah.
Um, Versus like the way I teach is asking the student questions and pushing
Mhm.
in towards the answer, So I think, why don't you know the answer is an expectation, and well, what do you know to get to the answer? That's encouragement.
Yes. Yes. Oh, what a great nugget there for teachers. It's not so much about, you know, being disappointed in a person for not knowing the answer. It's about asking them questions to kind of back things up so that they can come to the answer, right?
Yeah, it's, I
Yeah.
mean, similar to a therapist. When you go to a therapist, they don't tell you what, a good therapist doesn't tell you what you should do. They
Right.
help you figure out what you should do for yourself.
Right, right, right. So talk a little bit about your piano teacher. You shared with me a little bit about his expectations for you and what he was like as a teacher. Share a little bit about that and how, that was expectation, maybe not as much encouragement at first.
Well, my first piano teacher I didn't actually mention, but she was kind of a very lazy, I don't want to say lazy, that's not the right word, but she didn't have any expectation for me at all. And I was a kid that, like, I taught myself piano before I actually started lessons. So
Ah,
I already came into her with like a lot of stuff, but technique problems, because I had been teaching myself. So
right.
she kind of just like handed me a method book and said, okay, finish it. And I would finish it in like a day, because I could read music already.
Wow.
So it was like too easy. So eventually, like, my family was like, we need to get her with a teacher that is a little more advanced. So I went from that all the way up to like a Russian trained teacher, who he went to St. Petersburg Conservatory, I believe.
Wow.
So, and he emigrated here during the Cold War, I believe.
Ah,
So he, that's a very strong personality, a very strong person, amazing, amazing teacher. You know, if you're not familiar with the Russian method of teaching, they have very high expectations. So, and the output is also generally very good,
Yeah, very
but
disciplined, right?
extremely disciplined. I mean, I practiced. I was not the kind of kid that like would just do 15 minutes of practice a day. I started when I was older also, and my parents, you know, I wasn't one of the kids that got to do like a bunch of different activities. I got to pick one, and it was piano. So I was very serious about it, but I would go, he lived down the street from me, 3 houses down, and I would walk through people's backyards to get to his house. And he would always say like, you're not practicing enough to me, and I'm like, I practice like 3 or 4 hours a day, what more do you want, you know? And I'm hitting, you know, my teen years, your early teens,
Oh,
as a
wow.
young lady.
Yeah.
You start getting opinions about, and you know, wanting to be independent. So I loved rollerblading when I was that
Mm.
age, and I would rollerblade past his house, and one day he called my mom and said she can't rollerblade anymore because she's going to break her wrist.
Oh no.
And that was actually like, at the time, piano was important to me. You know, it never stopped being important, but at the time, hanging out with my friends was more important, you know. And I was
Oh,
also a violist, so I was in an orchestra. I was very like overscheduled kind of in the musical sense. So at the time, viola was more important to me in my mind.
okay.
Looking back, that was silly. But yeah, so he called my mom and said, you know, she don't let her rollerblade. And I said, you know what, I'm going to stop piano for a while. And I just stopped until I got back to college.
Wow.
Um,
So how long did you actually take lessons from him then?
From him, it was from when I was 13 until I was 16, I think. I might have been
Okay.
15, almost
Yeah.
16. Um, it was enough to like really give me like a really solid foundation. You know, I was already playing Chopin like after the first year with him, where
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going from like the Bastion level one book to Chopin in the
Yeah.
span of a year. So it was awesome. And I continued playing, but I really regret that because I feel like he was really tough on me in some ways that it's not his fault. He was incredible, and I know that he expected me to do music as a career. Like, he's probably the only person that realized that, and that's probably why he called my mom and said that stuff. Um, but it was just like too much, I guess, a little too overbearing for that
Yeah.
age
So
that I was
when you
at.
were doing lessons with him and you were playing all this repertoire at a difficult level, were you having any fun? Were you enjoying it in any way?
I loved playing. I loved the challenge. You know, he would give me.
Mm.
I at that age, I did not like performing, and I still have had to kind of grow. That's an anxiety thing, but I've had to
Okay.
grow into being okay with performing solo, and it's because I care about it so much. So I didn't have anyone in my life at that point helping me understand my anxiety. That
Mm.
came much later for me,
Yes.
and that's something I wish I had had some encouragement for
Sure.
from
That,
someone at some, you know. Yeah, so I enjoyed it though. Like I enjoy playing for myself, you know, like crazy. So I will sit and play for hours still as an adult when I do have time. Um, but I never stopped enjoying music, I guess, because of it. So that's the answer to that.
so how does that impact your teaching today?
Well, I like you, I have really high expectations for students, but I also one of the things that I'm really strict with myself about is I can recognize talent in a student. I have a couple, and I've had a few in the past that have gone on to study music, and I have a couple right now that I know are going to be like definitely their
Yeah.
path in life. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important to never put your expectations on a student. You know, as much as you know they have that talent, you can snuff that out really easily if you put too much expectation. So I'll tell a student, you know, you're really talented. If you keep working, you can get to, you know, whatever level on RCM or something like that. You know,
Right.
just depending on the student. I have a few students that are amazing singers, so we go with that kind of path for them, and I develop that stuff. And I still try to give them a little classical, but you know, it's so important not to pigeonhole your students, I think.
Yes.
So I've taken what he's taught me and what some of my other teachers I've had a lot of different music teachers, because I had also a viola teacher in high school, or not a orchestra teacher that was super super strict. So I've taken some of those things, but I've mixed it in with more of the California laid back. We're gonna have
Yeah.
fun. I call my students dudes sometimes, you know. Like it's not I don't think music is meant to be all stuffy and uncomfortable, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Because I that's what happened to me too. I had a fabulous teacher, but by the time I was a junior in high school, I was playing like level 10 repertoire. And my senior year, I'll never forget. Like I played this modern piece. It's that I hated, had no connection to it emotionally, had no connection to it in any way, shape, or form. Harmonically, nothing, because it was modern, and I just decided I hated it. Did one last competition, and halfway through my senior year of high school, I quit. I quit piano.
Yeah, it's
I just,
crazy to be piano teachers that quit piano. Like, it's nuts.
yeah,
But here we
yeah.
are.
But that's part of why I do what I do now with my students and have a very different approach. And like you, try to find out what the students are wanting to do, and within their framework of goals, we set pretty high expectations. But yeah, I think how we experienced music lessons growing up influences how we teach now.
Yeah. And my first experience with like music lessons was actually much younger. It was in kindergarten. We did like the Orff stuff in my
Yeah,
school. I was
yeah.
so fortunate. So I like had this great foundation, that made it so I don't want to say I didn't need a teacher. I definitely needed one, and I think I still need one. But it allowed me to like enjoy music on a different level than I would have if I was just like doing, only piano from the beginning. So I
Yeah,
think that all of your teachers, even your regular school teachers, if they sing to you and stuff, that stuff all matters too.
it does. It does. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what currently are sources of encouragement for you. 2020 has been brutal for most people, and
Yes.
it's like all any of us can do to like get ourselves out of bed and clothes,
Yeah.
and like most days, makeup is like what?
I can't, I mean, I broke my finger last week,
Yeah.
so putting on makeup and putting my hair up took a lot. Everything's taking longer right now.
Yes.
And this is the ironic part. I broke my finger roller skating. So shout out to my piano teacher from high school.
I love
Um, it's all comes full circle.
it.
There's
Has come
always a
full
reason.
circle, Christina.
So yeah, I'm amused, but also it's not great. Um, yeah, I think my boyfriend has been especially encouraging. He's really been the only person I've seen on a regular basis since March. I live alone, and
Yeah.
he lives probably about an hour away from me. So
Mm,
he usually comes up on the weekends. But in the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't see him for 50 days.
mm.
So I was very alone during that time, and the Facebook groups for the piano teachers became very important.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's great. He actually, the other day I was having a hissy fit over insurance stuff in my finger, and he came up and brought me dinner in between lessons and like helped put or tried to help me put up my hair.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
he's been really great during this time.
that's great, especially because, I know from experience too, like my spouse is like that. He just kind of knows me and knows the moods, right? And so every once in a while he's like, "You look like you need help
Yeah.
or something. What can I do
Well,
for
he
you?"
he was kind of laughing because I'm a very independent person. Like I really don't like help, and this comes also from my grandmother. Like my grandmother was like that, until the very end of her life. She was so stubborn, and I definitely have that. Like, I will try to lift things on my own. Yeah, go independent women.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other night when he was here, I was like trying to open something, and he was like tentatively like, "Do you need help?" Because usually I'll snap at him and say I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
actually, I do need your help now.
Yeah. Yeah. You also mentioned that your students have kept you hopeful. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, um, I think living like really far away from my family has always been kind of hard. I've been out in California for 18 years, so I have a network of people. But the people that I see the most often are my students and their parents. And I have
Yeah.
a lot of students in my studio who have been with me for like 11, 12 years now, so I'm really getting to know them. Um, and I think like seeing my students go through hard times in their families also, and seeing them stick with piano and try to work through a difficult passage or stuff, that kind of stuff is encouraging just because it's a reminder that you can, even though I'm telling them like you can do it, like I'm seeing it actually happen, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So, and it's just nice to see their face, especially right now, to see like a familiar face, and get to chat and ask them how they're doing, and they have cute questions that they wouldn't normally have,
Yeah.
about me. It feels like more of a connection between people, which I think is really encouraging, I guess. If that makes sense.
No, it does, because I think actually one of the things that I've learned too, and I've heard from other teachers, is the pandemic has caused all of us to kind of rethink, and we've shifted in a lot of ways. But one of the things we've learned, at least I know I have, certainly is I think I was taking lessons for granted. You
Mm.
know, just taking for granted that this is what I do. This is, I see my
Mm.
students every week. We do recitals. We do, this is what it is. And that, 2020 shook everything and kind of reshuffled everything and said, don't take this for granted, because it can be taken away in a moment. And
Yeah.
I think that's where the depth of connection came through even more, at least for me with my students, because I think we've definitely had that same thing happening too. There are some days where we play very little, right?
Yeah.
Because we're so busy just kind of sorting out life.
Yeah. I mean, my philosophy has usually actually, if a kid's or a student is having a tough time, like in an in-person lesson, I do let them chat, but I've had less of that actually. Like, and it's been more playing because
Hmm.
the parents are there and some of the parents don't
Ah,
like
sure,
that, which
sure.
is, that's a little discouraging. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like as far as my lessons, I don't think I've ever taken that for granted. I am taking for granted, or I was taking for granted recitals. And
Hmm.
this week, would have been my Christmas recital, which like every year is the most special one. And I think that's something that it's like, oh, you know, I appreciated it, but I couldn't appreciate it any more than, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So, but yeah, it's just I think that it's encouraging to see also that my teaching works even
yeah,
online, if that makes sense.
yes.
Because that was my big concern at the beginning. Oh gosh, we're going online. Am I going to still be as good of a teacher? Like, am I going to make it work? But I've made it work.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. I think that is an encouraging thing, is to kind of see that you did it.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of like flipping over so they can see me on video and stuff, that was easy. But
Yeah.
just figuring out how to show technique, or even right now, especially because I can't use my right hand. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting really creative with how I show stuff. I'm like singing while I'm playing my left hand. I was playing the right hand part. It's like now it's kind of encouraging in a weird way, like because I'm like, okay, I can do these things,
Yeah, I think it is
and
encouraging, because it's almost like discovering new or expanded skills.
yeah, and there's something that we can use forever. And I think one of the things I was telling one of my students too is like, you're going to be so amazing like after this pandemic is over, because all the kids, especially like the younger ones, are learning all this stuff that like adults don't even have some of these skills. Like,
Yeah, that is
so
true. So you mentioned several things already that encourage you: your students, your boyfriend, the Facebook groups, and I know you're doing yoga. Talk to me about yoga.
yeah, I do yoga with Adrienne.
Yay.
I've been doing yoga for years, probably like a little over 10 years. I didn't do it with her videos on YouTube before, but I kind of started doing that maybe 5 years ago. It's just yoga is really amazing because not only are you getting kind of a physical workout that's not like you're not overexerting yourself necessarily when you're doing
Mhm.
it. You're
Yeah,
becoming really strong
right,
over a period of time slowly. It's very similar to piano practice,
right.
because yeah, you can do a little and you do a couple beginning things and you can keep expanding your skill set. And some days are harder than others. Some skills are harder than others. But when you're in a pose, staying still, like a plank pose, for example, that one's really hard for me. Like the reason I like yoga with Adrienne is because she's very encouraging. She's like, okay, we're only here for
Ah,
another second. You can do
right,
it. She has a
right,
really
right.
calming voice. And then when you get out of that pose, you're like, okay, that moment passed and I made it through, which has really been what this whole year has been like for
Yeah,
everybody. Like, okay, I
yeah.
made it through another month, which, is crazy.
Mhm.
But it's a mental thing for me, and a spiritual thing, and an emotional thing, and a physical thing. And even though like I hurt my finger, I've been trying to figure out poses that work because that's how important it is to me. It just helps you center yourself, and take stock of the moment that you're in.
Yeah, and knowing that you're taking the time for yourself.
It's so important to do that. I think you can't move forward in life if you don't take care of yourself. Like, it just becomes this crazy mess of like a scrambled brain.
Yeah, because when I notice it when I'm just going from one thing to the next and I'm not doing the things that normally, are self-care for me. If I'm not out walking with my dogs, if I'm not, out just going for a walk even, or if I'm not, doing some of the other things that I enjoy, I'm just more irritable and
Yeah.
I'm just not, I'm not me. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but
No, I totally understand. I'm the same. I think yoga, the cool thing about yoga is that, like, you can be sitting in your office chair teaching and be taking some of the concepts. The breathing part
right.
is like, just like breathing while you're playing a musical instrument or while you're singing. It's the same kind of, breath kind of a deal. So if you're feeling stressed out, you can just look away for a moment and take a nice deep breath. And the
Yes.
student doesn't know the difference, The
Yes.
person that's on the other end of your Zoom call doesn't know the difference. And you're doing yoga in that moment, kind
Right.
of, in a way.
Yeah. I actually, at the beginning of this year, we did, with my students, I did, in talking with them about proper like posture and position at the piano,
Mm-hmm.
we did actual like yoga and
Yeah.
breathing as they were, and I was trying to get them to like center themselves, on the bench or whatever they were sitting on. Cause you get
Yep.
into, on these, you see them at their home and they're in a weird chair, like an office chair or something, which is fine. Or, they've got a bench that's way too low, or it's just, they're working with it, whatever they have, which I love. But, we did that. We actually did like, okay, let's sit and we breathe and we did that. And I think they thought I was the weirdest teacher in the world,
Oh, yeah.
but we did it.
Well, I took voice lessons when I was in college and a little bit after also, and like, I use a lot of concepts from that when I'm teaching.
Sure.
But I have a few students who are like me when I was in high school, and one of the big things that we work on actually is learning to center yourself before you perform. And we have varying results on that because everyone's in a different place in their journey with their anxiety issues. But I definitely do the same thing. I'll have them sit and we pay attention to our body alignment, when we play. And it's just so important so you don't injure yourself, but also so you enjoy playing. And that's something that I tell students also, like when I see them like rushing and stuff, I'm like, are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
Enjoy
Yeah.
it. It's music. You're not supposed to speed through it and
Right.
play all tense. But yeah, I have one teen student who graduated that I was like, you need to do yoga, and I prescribed him some Yoga with Adriene videos.
And did he do it?
I don't know if he's done it because he graduated, but like I should check in with him and find out because he's in college now and see.
What a great idea for homework, right?
Yeah. And another student, actually, she's younger, she's 10. She was one of those ones that kind of like, I have to get it right the first time. I prescribed them another like meditation for kids video.
Oh, see, and I love the way you frame that. You say the word prescribed.
I mean, obviously, I'm using that just kind of to.
No, but I really like that.
Not a doctor.
No, but I love that because I think that gets a parent and a child thinking like, oh, this is really important. This isn't just oh, by the way, when you have time, you should try this. No, this is like what will help solve whatever you're going through.
Yeah, or help them get, again, like on a mindset towards that direction. I think a big part of the way I advertise my piano lessons is that it's a holistic method. So, I'm really thinking about every aspect of a person's life, and hopefully, they may not ever go be a famous musician or, perform. And I have a few students who have never performed and don't want to, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it helps them to, become a better test taker or drive a car better or, just enjoy their life,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So
Yeah. Let me quickly move on because we are going to run short on time. We're having a great conversation, but I'm going to move forward. For somebody who's watching or listening to this right now and struggling in some way, shape, or form with their teaching or with their music or whatever it is that they're doing, what encouragement things can you offer them? And, I know one of the things that we've already talked about is, taking care of yourself and carving out time, for the things that help you feel better about yourself every day. But then I love another point that you shared with me too was surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. Dive into that one for me.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, when I first started my teaching career, it was very lonely because I didn't have a connection to anyone else who was doing the same thing. And I had to figure out, all the crazy business stuff on my own, even the teaching stuff kind of to a degree.
Yeah.
And when I found all these Facebook groups for all these piano teachers and these music business groups and stuff, suddenly there's like this wide network of people that you can talk to who are having the same problems as you. Like my boyfriend, my parents, my best friend, none of them really understand what it's like to do music. And I think even within my musician friends, I have a wide net of people that do that. They're all like performance people, so they don't understand the teaching end of things and that. So if you can find someone who you can connect with and chat with, and be a person for them to chat to you also, it's not one way. I think that's incredible because that connection to someone who understands you just makes everything kind of toned down a notch if you're feeling stressed out, and then you can look at the picture in a more clear way.
Yeah, it's having those people who you can trust, who you can vent with, but you can also be honest with, I think, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of the other things you said too, and I love this, separate yourself from negative opinions and people.
Yes. This actually comes from my programming side of things because as a female programmer, it does come from also the music, but it's more the programming. A female programmer, I have experienced a lot of opinions from people who early on as well, like maybe didn't think that girls did that job. I've had a lot. That would be a whole different podcast episode, but the biggest one I can remember is I used to work as a receptionist briefly at a tech company, which that company was amazing. Actually, the boss, I could tell he wanted me to move up, but I just really wanted to do music. So I worked as a receptionist and I would just answer the phone, but people didn't come in very often, so I had a lot of free time to sit at a desk. So I would sit there and I brought my laptop and I would learn to program basically some more complicated stuff. It's called PHP. And I remember the sales guy, it was this big dude, big white guy, just a bro dude kind of a guy, came by and he'd always kind of he was a joker, he came over and he goes, "What's that big red book?" And I'm like, "Well, that's my programming book. I'm learning PHP." He goes, "Girls don't do that." And then just walked out and I was like, "Oh, okay." Shots fired. People like that though only encourage me in a strange way because I am definitely a person who's like, "Well, you think I can't do it? I'm going to prove it to you." So that's at this point now I talk back to people when they say that kind of stuff to me, but at that age I didn't. But yeah, so
of course, it's definitely one of those situations where when it's your job and someone says, someone above rank, right, above your pay grade says that, you kind of have to be careful what you say. But yeah, any other situation, it's like, no, push back, please push back.
Yeah, well now, like I said, if I get, sometimes my corporate clients sometimes will argue with me and they'll get their IT person who's not the same kind of job as me come in and try to tell me how to do it. I'm like, well, your job, you know what you're doing, but only for your job. My job is different.
Right.
It's similar. And I've had to learn how to kind of speak up professionally in those times. But yeah, the thing that I was going to say is that you just don't want to let that lead you in life. If someone's being negative towards you, you can analyze, do I need to improve? But don't let that pull you down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who get stuck in negativity, and it's fairly easy to either get sucked into that and go there, or for me, it's been pretty easy always to walk away from that and just let it be and just kind of walk away from those people. But I know a lot of people do get sucked into that negativity.
I mean, I definitely am guilty of that. I get really angry. That's the one thing that makes me really angry. And I'll fester on it and complain to my boyfriend about it until he's so annoyed with me. But then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to work to prove that that's not true.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, that work ethic.
The other thing, couple other things you shared about encouragement were reminding yourself that you're human and everyone makes mistakes. How has that helped you in especially 2020?
Yeah, well, I mean, this year I think it's been reminding myself that everyone's human and no
Yeah.
one knows what's going on right now. And there really are no grown-ups that are going to
Yeah.
come and tell you everything's okay at this point, which that's a little sad. But at the same time, recognizing that you have to take the information that's given to you and just not hyperventilate over it.
Right.
Um, and if you do make a mistake, like that's okay. And you'll move on. It's kind of like yoga, if you can't hold a pose for 30 seconds, like do it for 20 and eventually, you'll figure it out. I fell on my hands roller skating. Like all my students are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, you know what? It was a mistake and I'm going to move on from it. It doesn't make sense to dwell on it. It doesn't improve
Right.
anything. Like,
And
what
it
are you
gives
going
you a
to do?
chance to explore one-handed repertoire. So there you go.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been trying to. I will admit I've been very upset this week, and it's been really hard. But like I keep when those thoughts start invading, those negative thoughts, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna read books over my Christmas break. I'm gonna, listen to more music and just have more stillness, and
Sure.
maybe yeah, experiment with some left-handed repertoire that's advanced. And
Yeah, and that
that's it.
is not a skill that everyone has. And I just have to say, if you don't have that ability to take a situation that is extremely frustrating. I mean, you have a broken finger and you're a piano teacher and a pianist.
Gotta laugh at it. It's
Yeah.
funny.
But if you're not able to turn that around in your head, it's going to be a long haul, right? A long time, of
Yeah.
healing and recovery. But if you can do exactly that, which is what you're doing, you're saying, well, maybe I can do something else right now with during this time because I can't really play effectively, and yeah, I can explore left hand repertoire or what right hand, whatever. But I think the ability to turn those things around is not present in everyone. And for some
No.
people, it is very, very, very difficult. And I see that in 2020. I see
I
more
was just gonna say
people.
that this
Yeah.
year certainly has been that way for a lot of people, um, and I think that it is hard. It's hard to. I've had to do that my whole life. A lot of the times, like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't do this, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this instead. Like that's a skill that was developed quite young for me, I would
Yeah.
say. But some other people that I know are having a really hard time. I'm trying to be that person that's encouraging and saying, well, like, what can you what if when I see someone really frustrated, what can you do instead? You know. So I think it's important to support those around you when you see people having that problem.
Yeah, and I think, the flip side of not keeping yourself around negativity and negative people, the opposite is true. Put yourself in places where you do receive encouragement, where you do find positive feedback, where you can, get help flipping those things in your brain, right?
I want to say one other thing actually also about the negative people thing. When I said that, I don't necessarily mean like completely getting rid of all people who are negative, especially
Right,
this
right.
year.
Right.
Yeah, because maybe helping those people realize, but not letting it affect you is more a better way to explain that. But yeah, yeah, you have to flip it, and help yourself flip it into a positive thing. Just
Yeah.
like that guy telling me I can't program. Yes, I can. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or, hey, when the finger's broken, okay, I can still manage. I
Yeah.
can still get through this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm making it work.
Yeah.
You got to make it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Exactly.
You can't survive in life if you don't make things work. That's my grandmother. She grew up during the Depression, and I think I got a lot of those skills from her. Because she grew up with so little, so I was taught to be happy with a little bit less.
Yeah. Boy, for the and I grew up not the same, but a lot the same. And those lessons were invaluable coming from people who were born, my parents were born in the 30s. And so they grew up, during rations, and they grew up having to live constantly with less and make do with what they had. And, we learned that too. And it's not to say that we don't want to glorify that time period and that
Yeah.
experience. And it's not that I want to deny my own children things, but we also try to balance, like, okay, we want to give our kids what we can give them, but at the same time we also want people to learn to work a little bit and have some pride in achievement.
Yes. Yeah. Where I live, there's a lot of people who are very, very affluent who
Mm.
haven't had the same life experience as me.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see that, like people, especially people slightly younger than me, because I'm a Zennial, so I grew up without the internet, and I grew up like figuring things out.
Yeah.
And the people that are just a tiny bit younger than me, like in their late 20s, early 30s,
Mm.
they want everything instantly and they want it now. And they don't, I feel bad for that generation because they don't know how to do the step back and say, okay, well, what can I do? Like everyone needs to have their phone on them all the time, or, be doing something constantly. I'm actually cool with sitting around doing nothing. Like I'm very good at occupying my brain. So that's something I think that has been a challenge for people this year. And I guess to people who are having that problem, that's why the yoga thing is something I suggest, because it teaches you to center yourself and to have that silence, but you're still doing something that's hard. So it's like teaching you that skill while you're doing something. It's interesting.
Right. Let me move to music here because
Sure.
I want to, I ask everybody, what music or what sounds, what songs are encouraging to you right now. And I'm going to share screen and we're going to listen to your top 5. These were fascinating to me, by the way. And, there's a lot of really cool like metal, like grunge metal going on, and there's some also really cool ambient, and I just love this mix. So let me just
love metal, but I didn't want to share anything that was offensive. So
okay, so
I chose some lighter metal. This is alternative Our Lady of Peace.
Yeah, so here's Our Lady of Peace in Repair, and here's just a 10-15 seconds of this.
Like a machine now, fix you from the start. I'm in repair like that.
This actually, I watched the whole video and listened to the whole thing. What a metaphor for 2020, I have to say.
Yeah. This album came out when I was in high school, when I was going through my first breakup, and it got me through that. But also I do, like, as soon as you asked me songs, I was like, In Repair is so appropriate. Because we're all in repair is one of the lyrics that's in here. And that's not what the song is about. I forget what the premise of the song is. But just it's kind of going back to like, oh, we're human. We're all in this together. We all have hard times. And this song always is something that this album in particular, this whole album is really amazing. I go towards this album when I'm having a rough time in life.
Okay.
It just centers me.
And I think there's something about that too, that music when we're in high school and it's connected to certain times of our events in our lives, that seems like what we just kind of always go back to, because I have some of those albums too.
Yeah. It's a comfort item.
It is. Okay, let me play this next one. This is Amber. This is Your Night. So fun. Here. I had never heard this song before, so when I first heard this, I literally got up out of my chair and I was like dancing.
Oh, yes.
This is club music. This is great.
It is. It was club music that came out before I was old enough to go to clubs, but this reminds me of like middle school, or I think even elementary school. I love 90s music, so like anytime there's like 90s dance music, I don't like dancing, but I will dance to that. And it's fun. This is your night. It's kind of
it's
happy,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
smiling.
All
that 90s music is like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's funny because I hearken, I kind of I relate it for older people, actually, much older than me. Like, no, this is 50s bebop.
I love 50s music. I love all music. It was really hard for me to choose this, actually, because I literally have such a wide span of interests.
Yeah. Let me switch over to this clip from Bjork. I'm familiar with Bjork. This is ambient, and boy, was this. I'd never seen this video before. This is cinematic, very dramatic, very cinematic. So let me play this clip. This is Bjork, Isobel. If I can hit. Oh yeah. Love that.
I love that album I forget what album that's on, but it's just very powerful sounding. I love the drums, and it's very primal feeling. And I love that, I love female artists, if you can't tell already.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bjork's just such a cool person, and just such an inspirational person, considering like that when she got popular, this kind of stuff wasn't really like a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, this was I'm trying to remember the phrase too, and can't it's not coming to me, but yeah, very. So if you're listening to this and you're not seeing the video, click on the link to this video. Very cinematic, really really cool. Because you almost kind of need the whole experience there. I love just the music too, but I like the visual as well.
It's really good music to put in headphones and just like
Oh
close
yeah,
your eyes and zone out to the whole album. Like
yeah. Oh,
I
I
think
can
actually
see it.
a lot of these artists, aside from Amber, probably like I would recommend listening to the entire album. I like albums.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so this next one, do you know how to pronounce the name of the band?
Alcest, probably.
Alcest. Okay.
Alcest, probably.
Okay.
And then the song is called Ultratomp.
Yeah, because this is all French, which I love. Actually, one of my favorite songs is in Brazilian, or it's in Portuguese. It's a Brazilian. So yeah, I love, and this is also this is a movie, basically, in a, YouTube video. It's like very dramatic, very cinematic. So if you're watching, really great, to watch the whole thing, but love, you can't understand the words exactly, but you get the idea.
Sans attendre ces jours passés, il fait dormir sans ouvrir la tête. L'étrange jour sous un ciel radieux, notre monde érodé, austère.
Ah, hate to stop that.
I had never seen that, but I have to watch that whole video. I
Oh,
love that they're walking in like a field together and he's helping her, and that there's like that abandoned building on the side. I love abandoned buildings.
yeah. Yeah, this is very cinematic as well. I mean, the video is 5 minutes long. What a great song. And then the whole thing is also very cinematic, very film-like. So really fabulous to go. Where were you when you first heard this song?
I used to live on the beach, and I think I have like Spotify, and I like to do like I just click like similar artists, and I go on
Oh,
like
yeah.
breadcrumb hunts kind of, and just
Yes.
click on. So I found this because of a metal band. I want to say it might have been a band called Between the Buried and Me, which is it's a lot heavier than this, but they
Okay.
have orchestral parts. And I want to say when I clicked on similar artists, this came up or something.
Yeah.
But it was
What
a
a
few
happy
years
accident.
ago. The next one that you're going to show is also the same. This guy I found on MySpace. His
Oh
name
my.
is Daniel Victor. He's very, very good songwriter. He has like different singers come in on the album.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So this is Never Ending White Lights. This particular clip is from Angels and Saints, and also very dramatic, very cinematic, very storytelling, and really fun to listen to.
Escape, walking around with a foot in the grave. They'll come along just in time to sing their song.
And we are going to leave people hanging right there.
Yeah, go listen to that one. All of his albums are incredible. That one I'd like because they're talking about singing. I know it's a very dark subject matter, but I tend to actually like very dark music, and it's weird. I didn't want to give you guys too much of that stuff because that's usually like I listen to metal when I'm really frustrated, and it
Yeah.
takes me out of like my bad mood.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find his music just to be very calming because it's just got like peaceful harmonies and those cool little drums that come in a little bit, but it's not in your face.
Yeah. It's really interesting because in a lot of these songs that you selected on your playlist, I was really, really mindful of the vocals, and I was like, "Oh, this makes perfect sense coming from someone who has vocal training." And
I don't like bad singers. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, probably the worst one in there is the "This Is Your Night" song. With that, again, it comes back to childhood and it being a dance song.
No, those are fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing those because really a great, everybody finds encouragement and hope and things. Everybody finds different, right? Different music uplifting, different music encouraging, different sounds up, helpful, hopeful. So I love that you shared those. Those are so wonderful.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you're listening, go to the show notes or in the comments on the YouTube channel. You'll find the links for all of those. Go listen and go watch, because if you're watching on the YouTube, these are phenomenal. They're like mini movies, and it's like a 5-minute, like that's a self-care in and of itself right there.
It's so funny because I've never watched almost any of those. I'm gonna have to go. I didn't realize that I liked music that was so cinematic.
Oh yeah, really, yeah. So yeah, I really enjoyed those. I appreciate you sharing those. Well, listen, this has been an amazing hour with you to share just what encourages you, what encouragement you have for others. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun to chat with you.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to let people go, but make sure that if you are watching or listening, that you listen all the way to the end to get all those show notes. Click on the links, check out the YouTube channel, Sounds of Encouragement, or check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I know this is on Apple Play. I know this is on Spotify right now, and it might already be on Google Play as well. So check those out. And to all of you who are listening and watching, thank you so much. If there's anything that you would like to do to get involved in Sounds of Encouragement, check out soundofencouragement@gmail.com. Drop me a note or an email there and let me know how you would like to get involved or whether this has been helpful for you. All right, we are going to wrap it up today. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.